talk more about this monumental appointment. We are joined now by Father Thomas Massaro, professor of Moral Theology at Fordham University. Father, welcome. You joined us earlier as we were watching the new Pope's first Mass in the Sistine Chapel. How did you feel watching that moment?
Well, it is a great moment. What's happening now in the days after the selection of any pope, including Francis 12 years ago, Vatican watchers, theologians like myself here at Fordham, we're looking for clues as to what signals he will send about his priorities. So today's homily, I'll give him an A+. I'm a theology professor. He said all the right things. He emphasizes humility, and that's very much in continuity with Pope Francis. So the next couple of clues we'll get are on that Sunday Angelus message. Every pope gives one Sunday at noon if he's in town in Rome, as the previous reporter Christina mentioned, and we'll see what he says. Those are usually short messages. Then he'll give an interview on Monday. That's typical. That's in the papal playbook. Long interview in front of the Italian media primarily. We'll see what he says then. And then the big event, I think, later this week, probably 5 days from now, he'll have a large mass for tens of thousands of people. A big mass. It's called the inaugural Mass of the Pontificate at St. Peter's Basilica. And he'll give a longish homily, 15 or 20 minutes, and we'll get even more information about his priorities.
And this morning, we actually heard him speaking in English. So what was it like hearing that? After all, we are, of course, getting used to this idea of an American pope.
Absolutely. For an American, I just never thought that we would have an American pope. I've given interviews before, including during this conclave about 2 days ago, saying, oh, no, rule that out. It's not possible. So we were all wrong about that one. To have him speaking really good English is a bonus for those of us who don't know that many languages. Pope Francis came to the United States in September of 2015, and he spoke very belabored English in his address to the U.S. Congress, and also whenever he spoke at the United Nations on the same trip. It was hard to understand what he was saying. His English was so weak. This is a great boon for us.
Father, at one point during the homily, he talked about how the Christian faith in some parts of the world is mocked or opposed. And he said those are the places where the church's outreach is desperately needed. So what were some of the key takeaways from his homily?
Well, he is known as a missionary. I mean, just think about it. You grow up in Chicago, you enter the Augustinian order. They run Villanova University, where he studied for his bachelor's. And within a few years after he's ordained, they send you to Peru, and you are a missionary for a few years, just doing humble parish work on the edge of a medium-sized city, and then being named eventually a bishop there in Peru in a small diocese called Chiclayo. So he's a missionary spirit, a humble man, and I like the spirit that he brings of taking risks, leaving his homeland, spending 20 years in Peru, and then another 12 or 15 years in Rome. He is a risk taker, and that's the kind of spirit we need in our church.
Now, it was also interesting to point out that 2 women delivered readings at the start of the Mass. Now, you mentioned looking into any indications, the symbolism there. What does this indicate about how the new Pope feels about the role of women in the Church?
Well, that's a very positive sign. I'm always in favor of it. When I did my first Mass about 25 years ago, I insisted that we have female altar servers, which was kind of a new thing back in the 1990s. So I support this. I have heard reports that he is less likely to entertain the notion of ordaining women as deacons or even priests, even less so than Pope Francis. You may recall that Pope Francis did rule out the idea of ordaining women priests, but he did appoint 2 commissions to study the possibility of ordaining women deacons to help in the liturgy and do service like prison chaplaincy. But those commissions didn't really go anywhere. He kind of shelved their findings. So I don't think of this new Pope, Leo XIV, as renewing that study. Nothing he's said so far leads us to believe that, but I would be interested in hearing that possibility.
Father Thomas Massaro, professor of Moral Theology at Fordham University. Thank you, Father, for joining us.
Glad to be with you once again.